and everyone who surrounds us, because it opens our eyes. It makes us see things in a way that perhaps we couldn't see before. It's,
Yeah, just
I think
that
it's very,
journey, right? Like that journey of
mm-hmm.
even bringing something that is solely an idea and making it real. That process in and of itself makes, well, what's in here that I'm trying to bring out, just that act is really centering and helps us to know more about ourselves, know more about how we are seeing things, hearing things, and then allowing that to inform how we want to move forward, right? And how we want to do the next artistic stroke or sound, whatever that facility happens to be. I do want to talk a little bit about the painting behind you, because that's something that I've seen that even in your day-to-day life, as far as meals and all this kind of thing, that is all important to you to have it be a beautiful thing and to let it enhance the experience of being together, of the meal or whatever have you. So yeah, tell us a little bit about the painting behind you.
I'll be happy to talk about that and some of my, I guess you'd call it my foodie journey, but it goes beyond that. But I'd also like to just respond to what you said before. I think that when we talk about creating art, we are getting in touch with the divine within ourselves. Whatever that means to everybody who's listening to us, to you, to your listeners, we are performing an act of creation every time that we self-express, every time that we paint or we sing or we draw or we dance or we cook. And so I feel that it's important to honor that space of the divine as being sacred, right? So when you talk about a meal, yes, of course, we do have this basic biological need to eat, and that's important, and we all get hungry. And many of us are living in places where we are both blessed and cursed to have access to a lot of food. Not everyone in the world is that lucky. Um, but we sometimes are using it just to fulfill emotional needs. Sometimes we're using it, as I said, for biological needs, but it is also, again, a space for gratitude. It is a space for ritual. It is a space for recognizing whatever the divine means in our life. And I don't want to put any denominational spin on this. And I know there will be people who are atheists as well. Call it a higher power, call it universal energy, call it whatever you want, but I believe it exists. And I know this can sound a little bit woo-woo, but in the end, as far as I'm concerned, it's the little details in life that make a difference. Because I don't want to just eat to get through the meal. I want to enjoy something that tastes good, that looks good, that smells good, that everyone has hopefully helped prepare together. So there's this communal space of creation, of sharing, of speaking, of laughing, of listening to music while I'm in the kitchen. That's important to me. And when you sit down at the table, if you can make it look lovely, well, again, it's enhancing that communal space, whether it's you with yourself and the food and whoever is your higher power, or it's you and your children, or your spouse, or your partner, or your colleagues at work, or your fellow musicians. It's just, there's something about breaking bread that has, again, over millennia, created a lot of space. And how many problems have been solved over a good cup of coffee and a piece of cake, you know? So I think that in the world that we're in right now, people talk about experience all the time. The tourism industry is focused on experiences. All your credit cards, they're all telling you, come have a great experience. There's a reason for it, because it comes a point where an object doesn't have nearly as much value as the sensation that you can live when you bring beauty and joy and art and music and travel and learning about a new culture and all these different things into your life. And if I get back to the painting and how that relates to all of this, I think I would like to say this as a tribute to the women of my family. I feel very blessed to have had women as ancestors who not only were strong and smart and knew how to get things done, but also knew how to find those small, momentary spaces of joy in life, whether through a beautiful table or delicious food. And by the way, none of this has to be expensive. I'm not talking about the money part of it. It's the care that goes into it. It's how you choose to, did you throw the ketchup bottle on the table? Did you even use ketchup, right? But did you throw the ketchup on the table in its bottle and let it go all over the place? Or did you put it in a little dish so it looks nice? And no, nowadays we don't all have time to do that all the time. And I've been known to eat out of a takeout container on occasion myself and throw my feet up on the cocktail table and watch television, because who hasn't? But if you ask me how I really like it, I come from a family of women who appreciated gracious living and who learned how to do a lot of things that would make their lives more filled with art and with beauty and with just ways of appreciating and having gratitude for the smaller things in life. This painting is a beautiful abstract, and it's an abstract that inspired my mother to paint many of her own abstracts. And in my work, you will often see me in front of paintings, most of them actually made by my mother or my children, because I love being surrounded by color. It makes me feel held. It makes me feel that they are still in my life. And that is, to a great extent, also the purpose of art. It's immortalizing the person who created it. How many of us remember somebody down the street, but if they gave you something from their library, or they gave you a painting, or if they gave you their favorite recipe, that's how you keep them alive, right? And so I really feel like having all of this, beyond what the color itself can do for you, because color has an effect on us as well, but just being surrounded by my mother's art is something that absolutely embraces me. I don't know how else to say it. It embraces me, and it inspires me to keep working and to remember that she wanted me to keep doing more art. And that's something that I sometimes have to remind myself, because again, if we're not one of those select few who are considered commercial phenomenons, art can easily get relegated very far to the background in our day-to-day existence. And then where's the joy? Where's the joy?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something I think you do naturally, but also intentionally, which is finding that beauty within um, the day to day, right? And letting that be a point of focus. Um, and it's so true. Like whenever we have that special object, and for me, it's actually the, if anybody's noticed, the like, thing that has backwards words. It's actually my mother's. I guess you could call it like a prayer kind of shawl, but it's just a little tapestry, right? That she had on the back of her couch where she used to do studies and pray. Um, and so it's just, it reminds me of her because I've seen her in that place so many times. And it makes you feel more held. It reminds you, especially if you have like a great mother, it reminds you of that kind of lineage that she's passed on a certain level of quality of essence to you. And for me, it has been spirituality. And even though I approach it completely differently. Um, so yay. So yeah. And that's something that I think the more people allow there's some space to experience what beauty looks like for them. And then, yeah, like you said, it doesn't necessarily have to look like any particular one thing on the table or any of that. It's just like how you honor that thing. Like I like to have my guacamole or my fruit in a clear bowl, but that's just because like you get to see all the beauty of the fruit. And yeah, there's just something cool about that.
There
But yeah,
is,
it can
absolutely.
be that much of the thing, right? And is that how you think of a ritual, or when you mention ritual in your work, how do you see ritual, and then how do you use it as a healing tool?
So ritual can be seen in a lot of different ways, and some people might think of it as specifically being relegated to some kind of a religious service, a church service, or a prayer vigil of some sort. And of course, that is one very powerful type of ritual, and it's one that many people rely on their faith as a way to get through tough times in life. And I have seen many different religious denominations and how they do ritual. And each one of them is filled with symbolism and metaphor and praise and gratitude. And for the people who are in each one of those denominations, it at least hopefully means a lot to them. And many of those traditions, again, they're centuries or thousands of years old. But ritual can be something as simple as having a cup of tea, right? It can be as simple as filling a bathtub and putting some candles around it. Ritual can be going out into a forest and screaming when you think nobody can hear you. Ritual can be all sorts of things. It can be burying something, burning something. It can be creating something and then destroying it. Like to give you a list, I actually, in my work, I include lists of all sorts of different types of rituals to inspire people to figure out what is the ritual that resonates with them, because what resonates with me is not necessarily what resonates with you, is not necessarily what resonates with someone else. And then as we cross cultures, that gets even more complex, right? But what is ritual really? Ritual is a rite of passage, and it represents, in many ways, I believe, a choice, a sealing of a choice, of saying, perhaps there's a ritual around our new year. The clock strikes 12, and what do you do? And there are all sorts of different traditions around that. And they're sealing a choice. In Latin cultures, if you walk around the block with an empty suitcase in your hand when the clock strikes 12 at midnight on New Year's Eve, you have decided you're going to travel that year. There are so many rituals. Yeah, isn't that fun? So there's lots and lots of different rituals. Some of them, again, are more religious. Some of them are more pagan. Some of them are non-denominational. There's all sorts of things that can be considered a ritual. But how do I use it in my work? I think there's something very special about ritual in terms of sealing our choices. And we haven't talked about it much yet on our conversation today. You, of course, have a lot of background knowledge that some of the people hearing us don't have, but you know that I've created a course. And the course is called From Caterpillar to Butterfly, Shepherding Women from Trauma to Joy. And it's a self-paced digital course that uses music and art and ritual to help women who've been through any kind of relationship trauma at whatever level and however long ago, whether it's now or 20 years ago, and they realize they haven't finished processing some things, to get back in touch with their inner child and then make some decisions to move forward. And we use art and music as ways to look inside in a way that bypasses the brain, because the brain has been normalized by society to understand that all these things of being mistreated are normal. And they're not normal, and they shouldn't be normal, and they are destroying so many of us. And again, you're not going to have only women listening. So for the men out there, yes, men go through this as well. And you all need help too. I'm not sure if I'm the right one, at least at this point in my life, to be helping you. I work with women at this point. Going through relationship trauma can last through generations, and we want to cut that cycle. We want to cut it in us so we can find joy again. And we want to stop it from propagating, because a lot of it is epigenetic. A lot of it is my father was like this or my mother was like this, and so I seek it out in a relationship. So once we start to recognize it, many of us are going to say, wait a minute, I don't want to live like that. I deserve more. I am worthy. I'm beautiful. I don't want that in my life. And I'm going to make a choice that this was what happened before. Hang on, we're backwards. This is what happened before, and this is what's going to happen. Spatially stuff, that's hard. But this is what happened before, and this is what's going to happen in my future, because I want things to be different. So how do you seal that choice? How do you make it real? How do you say to yourself, it's a before and an after? You're not going to remember 10 years down the road, perhaps the day that you made the choice or the exact words with which you made the choice, but you will remember if you buried your wedding contract. You'll remember, I promise you that, because I did it and I remember. I definitely remember. And you will remember the day that there was a baptism, and you'll have photographs of it. Or you will remember the day that you danced your first dance on a stage because you decided that dance represented your freedom. You'll remember the dance. You may not remember all the details. You may not remember the exact date, but you will say to yourself, from that time on, I am a new me. So I gave birth through a creative act to a new version of myself. And that is what the ritual allows to happen. And this is hardwired into our DNA as human beings. As you have said to me in the past, I'm probably the most logical artist anyone is ever going to meet. So I have had a lot of skepticism around all of this stuff. But if we look back in history, right, over time, ritual, whether it's before a birth, or after a birth, or it's a joining of partners in some form of a marriage, to call it that way. You're going to remember your wedding vows. It's stuff you remember because it marks a before and an after. And it's what shows us that the world is changing and we are changing also. The way that
Yes,
I use
powerful.
ritual in my work.
Absolutely. So powerful because that's true. There's very few things that live and so deep enough that we can't forget it, right? It becomes part of who we be. And then that allows us to see who we are continuing to be
Mhm.
differently. And I have a process that I think of as celebration. And to me, that's how um, the visual of ritual is coming to me from the words you're speaking. So I think like when we're celebrating the shift, the change, the new the decision, like you're saying, a new choice. Yes, it's powerful and beyond our understanding, like it cements
Far
things
beyond.
into our energy and in our body. Yes, absolutely. Ooh, I want to know like how you think of people that are experts or like specialists, or how do you see those as two different things? Let's start there. Experts versus like a specialist. How do you see those as different?
Let me ask you a question. If you run into an issue in your life, do you look inside yourself or outside of yourself for a solution? Because I know you, I know the answer, but go ahead.
You know, I look inside first always. Yeah.
You look inside first, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So a part of that is your energy and your way of being and your choice. And you and I might be very different in that. In fact, we've had a lot of conversations about this and about the value of both going in and going out. And there's value in both sides. They're a complement. All of this is a complement. Nothing is a substitute because we are very complex individuals, all of us.
Mm.
But we have been taught in modern society that we are often taught, not always, I'm going to qualify that. We are often taught that the only way to find solutions to problems is to go to what society calls experts, but I'm going to call specialists. Okay. So you asked for a definition. I'm going to explain this. Being an expert, having expertise means that I know something about something, right?
Yeah.
Can we agree on that? Can we get that far?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can,
Spend
right?
some time on it,
So,
at least. Yeah.
okay, so we know something about something. So, who is the biggest expert in Monifa Harris's life?
Me. Me.
Uh-huh. So you are bringing an awful lot of knowledge to the table when you have a problem or an issue or a celebration for that matter, right? Okay. You know your life best. Now, do you know everything about everything? No. So do you sometimes need to go find somebody who knows maybe a little bit more about a specific topic, like whether it's tech or it's relationship trauma, or you know a lot about voice, so you would certainly be a specialist on voice, right? Maybe you need
Mhm.
some legal advice. Sometimes you need to go see a specialist because you know about you, but you don't know about everything that's out there. And the specialists have done a deep dive on a specific subject in which they are specialists that can help you as the expert in your own life, perhaps broaden your point of view, perhaps learn about a possible solution, make sure you're not getting in trouble with the law, whatever field it's in, right? So we have
Mhm.
experts and we have specialists, and we have learned to call our doctor an expert. We have learned to call our lawyer an expert. We have learned to call the consultant an expert, the psychologist an
Mhm.
expert, right? And yes, they have incredible specialized knowledge that is very, very important, useful to us, useful to society, crucial, absolutely crucial. Nothing I am saying replaces what a specialist can bring to us. But what I am talking about is the fact that Monifa Harris is the biggest expert in her life who occasionally needs to consult a specialist to learn a little bit more about how to make her life better, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
everything that I'm doing is to connect that expert tools and the resources that will help get past whatever issue we need to get past. As I said, I'm working on relationship trauma, right? So
Mhm.
I, as a specialist, not a psychologist, not a lawyer. I never say I am not a trained medical professional. I am a certified community therapist, which is a different thing. And we can talk about it if you want, but that means I facilitate a certain group spaces with a Brazilian method, a brilliant Brazilian methodology that helps communities discover that they are experts in their own lives, and that amongst all of them as community, they have developed a lot of strategies to get through the things that perhaps plague them in everyday life, right? But again, none of that substitutes for a specialist's input. It's a complement to it, and it's a starting point, and it's a space where we can say, okay, maybe I actually can make a difference in my own life. And then I can maybe run up against a barrier where I say, for this, I need a specialist to help me.
I love that so much because that's something that I've seen in you as well. Just really being smart about co-opting specialists, but never coming off of your square as the expert of your own experience. You're very clear that you have that understanding of who you are, and then if it runs up against what you're hearing, you will speak about it, right? And as a specialist that has had that experience, and the best resourceful person I know, like that will find the person that knows what she needs to know and have that conversation and have a whole list of questions that make them maybe even discern what they do on a deeper level than they've ever had to do before, because it's being applied to real world in a very clear way, right? Somebody's real challenge, problem, reality that needs to be addressed by their expertise or their specialty knowledge, right? So yeah, so I think that just to hear your thought process behind that is like, ooh, that's like a gift right there that you're giving us of what's so meaningful about that, and how you get the most out of it is by not giving up your expertise of self, right? Um, and I love that so much. Yay. I do want to talk about a little bit of the mindset of being willing to have like other cultures. So Lisa has lived over 30 years in Ecuador. Obviously spent time with some Brazilian person to learn her method. And yeah, she's part of that organization as well. Speaks at least three languages, right?
Really speak well, I'd say Spanish and English, but I understand Portuguese. I do speak a Portuñol, as we like to say. I understand Portuguese, and there's a couple other languages I've flirted with, but I consider myself fully bilingual in just English and Spanish.
I see, yeah. But like in ways that other people can even understand. I mean, very proficient, obviously, from the time that she's spent in these amazing communities, and does it as a specialist as well. And so what you've gleaned from those things and still maintaining the strong sense of self through these multiple experiences. And how do you see that? I've seen you fully immersed in Ecuadorian culture, in love, in life there, right? In this beautiful home and your day-to-day life. And yet again, holy Lisa, never anything but. How do you do
I don't know if I
that?
would actually, I don't think I would agree with that, actually.
No?
I appreciate that you see me that way, but I don't agree with
Yeah.
that. So when I moved to Ecuador, I'm originally from New York. Um, Anybody who knows New Yorkers, particularly from those of us who spent some decent amount of time in the city, by the way, the city, right? I
Yeah.
used to joke that I'm the center of the world, which is what many New Yorkers they tend to think of ourselves as, and I went to the middle of the world, which is where
Oh,
Ecuador
isn't
is.
it?
But
Yeah.
that's just a little joke, but it's true. I mean, there is some sense in New York that you have the best of the world at your fingertips all the time, right? So you're exposed to a lot of things that you might not be exposed to, good, bad, and ugly. There's everything, right? But New Yorkers, we tend to be very direct, very transparent, very in your face, if I can say that. And Ecuador is not like that. Ecuador is a culture where people generally don't speak their mind. They will say one thing, they'll make it sound pretty because it can be very beautifully spoken, but there's a lot of not saying what you really think, not being much more diplomatic would be a nice way to say it, being hypocritical at times. is sometimes the case, not always. As always, there are some really straightforward people, and there's some people who aren't. But speaking at a bigger level, Latin America is very different country to country. The people you meet in Bogota are a lot more like, sorry, Bogota, I'll say that more English, like in Bogota are more like New Yorkers. People who live on the coast have a different way of being. People in Argentina are totally different from people in Bolivia, are totally different from people in Mexico. So I am certainly not going to do the cardinal American sin of saying that all of Latin America is alike. But what I will say is that surrounded by that culture, and it's a culture that is very machista, it's very chauvinistic. Women are generally expected still, even to this day, to be much more submissive, to be more quiet, to be small. And that's not who I am. And it's not who I ever was. And there's a saying that says that the fish changes with the water you swim in. That's a Spanish saying. And it's true. And so, yes, I made a decision, a conscious decision when I moved to Ecuador that I wanted to do as the Romans, that I wanted to learn the culture from the inside. I do pride myself on saying that I think I am and one of the few expats who really did that. I am a specialist in language and I am natively fluent at a high level in Spanish, and I write and I compose lyrics and poetry in that language. And so, yes, I am a specialist at that. And I really allowed myself to go deep into that culture, and I allowed it to change me. And in some ways, I think it changed me for the better. And in some ways, it turned me into somebody I didn't even recognize, and that is not good. And since I've moved back to the United States and lived in my mother's home, surrounded by her strength and her energy and her brightly colored paintings, I have come back more to myself. And a lot of that process is what feeds into my work of saying, if somebody like me, who is so strong and so well prepared and so whatever you want to say about me, but whoever I am, was able to be swayed into becoming somebody I'm not, what happens with people who don't have that inner strength? What happens with people who don't have that education, who don't have, and I don't just mean formal education, I mean life education and family to support them and a network of friends who appreciate them for who they are. And I get worried about those people. And it's another one of the reasons why I say, let's get into art, because your voice doesn't lie. When you go and sing, tell me, you as a specialist in voice, Monifa, do you know, can you close your eyes and not see me? And we can do this like blindly, anonymously, and you hear my voice and, oh, she's got unresolved trauma around this, or she's not feeling well with that, or she's in this kind of a mood, or like you hear it in the voice. And my first voice teacher used to talk about the voice as a separate entity. He would say she, because voice in Spanish is feminine. She is feeling like this today. And I would look at him and I'm like, what are you talking about? And he'd say, she is the voice.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's a very gendered language, right? So we're not even going to go into the inclusive pronouns thing right now. We're not going to talk about that, but I'm going to just talk about this 30 years ago when it happened. And what we talked about was the voice is a woman. And she lives in us, but she is her own entity. And we know, and if we start painting and we're trying to paint this beautiful little delicate thing, and all of a sudden something washes over us and we just start doing that, like what's behind me? Well, don't sit here and try to tell me that everything's under control. You clearly have something you need to get out of you. So without even going into deep art analysis or music analysis, art tells the truth because it's coming from the heart and the soul. And it's at some level bypassing the brain. And it should. Because when I learned, when I improvise in jazz, yes, I have to have studied a lot. I have to understand the structure. I need to know about harmony, and I need to know about rhythm, and I need to know all sorts of things. But in the end, I need to know it well enough that I can forget about it and let my heart sing. Because otherwise, it's technical, but it won't reach you. That's not what it's about. Right?
Right.
So I did not stay exactly the same. I feel like I'm back to being me and a better version of me, and therefore more able to hold space for others to be the best version of themselves. Because been there, and I've gone through that transition of forgetting who I am and what matters to me and what I value and coming back to it. And again, I'm just a step ahead or maybe two steps ahead of whoever I'm working with, perhaps, because I still am transforming myself. When I talk about going from a caterpillar to a butterfly, it's a transition. And we are all imperfect human beings.
I see what you mean. And it's always amazing to me that what we do the best is often what we are most aware of what not doing well. And I stand by what I said. And if only because you knew enough to find a specialist that would bring you back to yourself. And a lot of people never recognize that needs to happen even. So so yeah, and it's beautiful because we all have our stages, and being with somebody who has had the full experience, then you get to glean from the wisdom of somebody who's had to do it themselves in real life, in reality, right? Of letting art reveal their true self. And Lisa has walked that journey. She has been an artist before and after her experiences, and it's still what makes her most alive in herself, right? And she's passing that beauty on to the rest of us. She's got an amazing gift here for us called the Wake Up Checklist, a brief guide to identifying healthy versus unhealthy romantic relationships. Do you want to tell me a tiny bit about that?
Yes, I will. And I want people to realize that this is developed both in terms of my own experience working as the director of an international foundation. Certainly, it's based on what I and so many of my women friends have seen in relationships over the years. A lot of us have lived a lot of the things on that list, not everything, but we can certainly get essences of some of the things that are mentioned. And it's also based on my review of a lot of research around the psychology, around the cycle of violence, which of course is the extreme version of what an unhealthy relationship can become. And we hope that it doesn't, right? I've done a lot of work doing prevention work through the foundation that I run, through this course that I'm working on, and through my music, having written anthem songs about these issues inspired by real life events that I saw in India and then I saw replicated in Ecuador. And we've also seen here of violence against women, particularly. But what is this checklist? It's a list. It's an explanation of some of the most common signs that you might be in an unhealthy relationship. It's not always easy to read it, to be honest, because it's asking us to look in a mirror. And that looking in a mirror is waking up your expert. And it's waking up the expert that maybe you allowed to lapse a little bit because it was too painful to see her, or because, again, you short circuited through the brain part and you ignored the little voices that were in your heart, in your soul, in your gut, which was really your inner child speaking to you and saying, this something doesn't feel right. But we ignore it because our brain says, no, 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 it's okay. I'm going to walk right past those red flags. They're not there for anything important. Wrong. They are there for something important, but a lot of us have been socialized to ignore them. And that's why I'm saying that a lot of work I do empowers us to step into being our own expert. Looking at this list, and it runs the gamut. Everything from what some people would consider minor, like a simple lack of respect, which, if we remember the famous song of that title sung by Aretha Franklin, RESPECT, don't know what it means to me. That's not a minor offense, right? What matters to me the most may not be what triggers you the most, and so on and so forth. So the list tries to be quite comprehensive. And I am aware that it can be hard for some people to read, to take a look at. And that's why when we go through this, I hold your hand in the course. I hold your hand as we go through it. I explain it some more, and I provide some tools with which you can de-trigger yourself, some self-help tools, some EFT tapping, a meditation. And on social media, I have shared, and you can find this on my YouTube channel, an entire playlist. It's on my YouTube channel, it's on my Instagram as well. You can find an entire explanation of what each one of these symptoms and signs of unhealthy relationships refers to allow you to work through your own expert view of how your relationships have been. And it might be something you're living right now, but it also might be something you lived 20 years ago. And we have a mutual friend, Monifa, I will not name names, but it is someone who has talked about this publicly, who is currently in an amazing marriage and is really, really happy. And yet admits that 20 years ago, she was married to an alcoholic. And even to this day, having been in an amazing marriage for 15 years, she still has trust issues and she still has vulnerability issues. And she still, every once in a while, sees the ugly demon of an unhealthy relationship from way back when popping up in her current relationship. And she bought my course. And she said, you know what? I still have things to work through, and I've done it the way the specialists suggest, but I've never done it with art. I've never done it with music. I want to try this because I think it's really, really powerful. The idea of this wake up checklist is to say, hey, stand up, look in the mirror, and speak to your inner child and tell her honestly, what do you see? And honesty is not always easy, but it is the first step towards healing. And it's a necessary step towards healing. If you can't see it, if you can't name it, then there's not much you can do to work through it. So I'm there to hold space for it in my course. And at any rate, you can be the expert in your own life and use that checklist without paying a penny. It's available. You can download it. It has some nice little intro and a nice little explanation to accompany it. And yeah, it's out there. It's out there. And I hope it helps a lot of people.
Yeah,
A
I'm
lot of
sure
women.
it will. Yeah. Yeah, if you're smart enough to take advantage of it, it will. And so yeah, I am excited that you're getting these tools into the hands of our amazing beings in our space and this audience. So thank you so much for the work you have done and that you're continuing to do. And you're always been a bright light, and I'm so glad that you're vocalizing it more lately. And we're looking forward to all the adventures moving forward. You can follow her on Instagram. We'll have some of those socials underneath the free gift area, okay, where you get that information. So thank you so much, Lisa, and you
Thank you.
guys. You're so welcome. And you guys in the audience, I will see you on the next interview.
You call me a saint, but you know I'm a stranger, all willing and able to do what you want. You think I'm a thinker, but I'm just a singer, all busy and pretty, just making believe. Boy, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling down to obscurity. Don't let me ever be this alone.
And we're back. Here's like slowly growing. Hi, Lisa. Oh, you're muted, hun.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Dr. Elizabeth is saying wonderful presentation. Daryl is saying awesome, Lisa. Um, so thank you so much for that. It was gorgeous. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. I thought I would pop in because we always have fun talking, whether it is prepared or not prepared. Here we are. And yeah, I just thought it might be nice to see if anybody had any questions. So here I am, dropping in.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. And I think especially anybody who has an artistic creative bent that may feel has been stifled in our current cultures. I feel like if you want to join in the party, please do. Hey, Dr. Elizabeth. So the doctor is our 3 o'clock speaker. So good to see you.
Nice to see you too. Lisa, I was curious. I don't know if I missed it or not, but what nonprofit are you running or doing your thing with?
So I didn't talk much about that, but I'm happy to answer. I'll try to keep it brief because it's a really long story. I started a US 501c3 many years ago. It's called Parriba Foundation. And the Spanish word means onwards and upwards, which is how I sign all of my letters. So it carries through my work. Um, we have been working on finding ways to reduce violence in the home, in schools, in societies. Not the traditional way of doing one-on-one work with specialists, as we were just talking about in the interview, but rather taking a more, how shall I call it, like a development approach, which is what I actually studied. And it basically is making an assumption that when you have societies like the one in Ecuador and many societies around the world, where violence against women in particular is so pervasive, it can be really almost impossible to deal with that issue on a one-to-one basis. So what we do is we try to find ways to work with the community, to empower the community to be the first place where violence is both prevented and then stopped. And that takes a number of different forms. It has to do with, in some cases, facilitating group healing spaces like the ones we were talking about in the interview. In some cases, it's educommunicational campaigns. So that means going out with music, with art, with socials, with videos, to find different ways to make people understand that you don't have to live like this. So that's part of what we've done. And then we developed a proprietary digital platform, which is actually Ecuador's first nationwide digital platform. And we've had 700,000 unique visits in the first 2 years of operation,
Wow.
giving people, yeah, it's pretty unbelievable, giving people information about where they can go as experts in their own lives to look for the specialist assistance they need. And so we have information. We mapped the whole country. We found 1,500 resources all over the whole country. And so women, children, teenagers, LGBTQ community, and the migrant and refugee community can go online, and in a question of a couple of clicks, anywhere they are, they can find psychological help, legal help, the justice system. They can find prevention mechanisms that are designed to diffuse crises before they happen, whether that's mediation or courses. There's a lot of different information you can find on the platform, and those incredible impact numbers are in the beta version. And I say it's a beta version because although it's complete and we validated everything, and we made a terrific first version, and clearly it's been working, but we have so many more dreams for it. And one of the reasons that I have developed the course I have developed, in addition to wanting to work with it as is to help as many women as I can, is that we will donate $5 from every course sold to keeping that platform open, because we have built it fully as volunteers. Everyone who mapped, me leading the project, conceiving and leading the project. We got a developer, Synergy, oh God, I just forgot the name, Synergy Systems. They came in and they developed it for us. Javier Paez. We had a community social psychologist, a master's degree in social psychology, who helped us determine what data was important to include, how to do it in a way that was inclusive. So anyway, that is our foundation. And we have built this whole thing, not only with no money, but with actually, unfortunately, total lack of cooperation on the hands of the people who should have been working with us. And so it's been a real labor of love. It's been a huge labor of love. And I hope that we have helped a lot of people with it. I really do.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, I saw that too, Daryl. Because I'm saying the interview again on this pass. So Daryl's saying how he loves how you use music to heal. It's his secret weapon that he uses on himself, which he does.
Beautiful.
He's like, he loves to create his own worlds with music, and he goes so deep with it. Like he just finds his own meaningfulness and his own truths revealed in lyrics and all the time. So yeah. So if anybody's wondering why I was speaking for Daryl, because he's my husband and that's what I get to do. I'm kidding. He can talk for himself at any time if he chooses. Susie.
And he will. And he will. We're glad to
And
have
he will.
Daryl's brilliant insights with us this week.
She
for
says that
sure.
like, yeah, you can talk, And then why did you say that? No, but no, for me, it's, I don't want to sort of racialize it, but my mom's in music. The music of our community, which is Deep South, has always been used to heal. I grew up with the music in the house, and my mom's, like I said, singer, playwright, writer, since I was born in the choir, and so music has always been a part of something that, even with my associations to moments in my life, I can always stamp with music. And plus, I came through the 70s and 80s, which had the best music. The most conscious music ever created on the planet, I think, is in the 70s and 80s. Soul music and R&B, old R&B. It's just so conscious of what they're talking about. They're all before their time. But yeah, it has always been something that I can always go back to find my center.
That's beautiful, Daryl. And yes, I do believe that that music heals. I've used it to heal myself. Um, so here's a little tidbit for those who are watching along until the end, and I'll share it with you as well. Monifa already knows this. When my mother passed a couple of years ago, I was quite distraught. We were very close. And the way I actually went about dealing with my grief is I joined a gospel choir. It's something I'd always wanted to do. And I looked a little different from most of the people in the church. I can tell you that for sure. But the music united us and it healed me. And it felt very much like a download from above that rooted me right into the ground in the best possible way. And I've had other experiences using music to heal myself. My anthem song, which is what started me on the path towards creating the foundation and is included in the first module of the course, but it's also out on all sorts of social platforms. It is meant to heal the society through music. And I think there are certain cultural groups that definitely give more importance to music as a healing tool. And certainly, having now lived the experience of being in a Southern Black church, and I hope I'm using the terms correctly because I don't want to offend anybody, but that is how they spoke about themselves. That was an amazing experience. To use the terms they used to use in the church, everybody was anointed. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You hear that music and it goes right through your soul. And I have the utmost respect for it. And I brought something else from my culture or cultures to the table as well. So I think there may be different cultural manifestations of how it's used, but I do think that most cultures have ways of using music. Sometimes it's more in the body, sometimes it's more ethereal. I happen to love what I think you're talking about in terms of a cultural manifestation of music. Um, Little secret pleasure right there. But yeah, there's so many ways to use music to heal. And really what I do in the course is I use my music to hopefully spark you finding your muse. Or anyway, I don't think you're going to be taking the course because it is directed towards women, but the idea is that it will spark creativity in others. So I'm passing the flame with my music and let people make music or dance or paint or craft or cook or whatever it is they want. So honestly, we all have it in us. We all have our way of expressing, and yeah, it's great stuff. I'm in as Lisa Markovits on Instagram. I think I just saw somebody pop that in the chat. And I know we're going to be moving on soon, Monifa, to your next incredible speaker. But I just wanted to thank you again for this great interview. I really enjoy speaking with you always.
Always, always, Lisa. Thank you so much for being here. And
Thank you.
Dr. Elizabeth Hernsky Beck was asking for your handle. It is on the gifts page, so you could even check out her gift while you're there. I don't know, but I feel like y'all should know each other in case you don't. Haven't thought that already, but I'm sure that's why she's asking. Yes, and then that's your link for the event page. We will be jumping off because this has been a longer one and we've already done a video. So in order to not bog down Zoom, see you in a sec or later, Lisa. And so we'll be jumping off to start at the top of the hour for Artemisia Divine, our erotic psyche specialist. And we're gonna really get into some deep consciousness understandings of what our secret desires are trying to tell us. So we will see you there.